Our podcast is named the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast, and the subtitle is Dispelling the Myths of Health, Fitness, and Nutrition. But I think I would love to add awareness to that subtitle. Cancer is the number 2 leading cause of death in the world, and rapidly approaching number 1, which is heart disease. Many people believe it's going to overtake it. And I think there's so much misunderstanding about this disease, especially the different types of this disease. Now, we covered breast cancer in the month of October. And this month, November, is the awareness month for another type of cancer. And it's one that's, I believe, I don't understand a whole lot about, and maybe you don't either. So I thought today we would cover pancreatic cancer with a specialist, Dr. Adam Huddleston, an oncologist with the USA Mitchell Cancer Institute, today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. Good day, and thank you for joining us. My name is Garrett Williamson. I'm president of Personal Edge Fitness. Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. So appreciate you tuning in today. Before we get into our subject, I want to let you know how to get in touch with us. If you have any questions about this podcast or any others, or like I've said many times, some of the best ideas for our podcast, like this one, come from our friends and clients and listeners. You can reach me at area code 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also contact me on my email address, which is Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. Personal Edge Fitness, of course, is also our website, personaledgefitness.com, and our Facebook page. Hit me up on Twitter at TeamPE. As I said in the intro, this is a podcast on pancreatic cancer, and we're going to learn, hopefully, at least a good foundation of information today from our guest, Dr. Adam Huddleston. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
First thing, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for asking. I'm a Floridian. I grew up in Central Florida, Orlando specifically. I married my high school sweetheart.
Awesome.
Went to Florida State University for my undergraduate and medical school. And then traveled out to California to do my residency training. We had our first child there, Henry, in 2010, and moved back to the Southeast to South Alabama in 2013 and had our second child, Bo, in 2014, and have been here since that time.
Fantastic. So, and now tell about your education now. You did your undergrad?
At Florida State University.
Okay.
I also did my medical school there.
Okay.
And then did my radiation oncology residency at the University of California, Davis in Sacramento.
I got you. Okay, fantastic. Why that field? I have never asked you that. So,
well, radiation oncology is an interesting blend of medicine and technology. We rely on very highly specialized machines that do very specialized care. So there's a very heavy basic science component to radiation oncology, including physics and math. And then you also have the patient care aspect, which is quite special. Okay.
Interesting. There's so many different flavors of medicine, and I'm always curious about everybody's story about how they got into which one it was. So it's fantastic. Well, we're talking today about pancreatic cancer, and I'm going to start very rudimentary. This is something that as I said in the intro, that cancer, I don't know if a single family cancer hasn't affected one way or the other. But the pancreatic cancer and the pancreas period is to me seems like a very misunderstood organ, or there's just a lack of education about it. So what is a pancreas?
Right. So the pancreas is an essential organ within our abdomen, and what it does is it helps supply enzymes and actually insulin. So we hear about diabetes a lot. So insulin comes from the pancreas to allow us to digest and manage our food and nutrients that come into our body. You oftentimes don't hear about it unless there's a problem with it. And it's this organ that's tucked away and kind of nestled in between other organs in the abdomen. It's kind of sneaky. It's kind of it's a small organ, but again, it wraps around next to the stomach and the first part of the small bowel and some of the vasculature, and is right nestled in between the kidneys, and so it's in kind of a tight space.
Tricky area, I would guess. And in this particular cancer, I had this described to me by a client that was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer back in the late 90s, and I'm very sad to say that we lost him to that particular disease. But he seemed to me he encapsulated pancreatic cancer in a simple analogy that he used, and that he said that, Garrett, if you were required to go to the cancer store and you were required to purchase something that this is the one you'd leave on the shelf.
Without a doubt. It's definitely falls into that category of one type of cancer that you just don't want to have to deal with.
And is that because of treatment difficulties, or what is?
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of components to pancreatic cancer that make it a challenge. One of them is there's no good screening tool. We have things like blood tests for prostate, for instance, and mammograms for breast cancer. There's not a screening tool for pancreatic cancer. So it makes it a challenge to find early.
Right.
It's also, because of its location, it's hard to manage surgically oftentimes. Okay. We are limited in terms of what we can actually remove. And as a result, our outcomes aren't as good as they are for some other diseases.
What are the usual, or are there any like signs of pancreatic cancer then? So you say it's hard to detect, but
the quintessential sort of presenting symptom would be what they call painless jaundice, which means you're not necessarily experiencing pain, but you may experiencing yellowing of the skin or yellowing of the eyes. Some folks can experience abdominal pain or itching, unexplained weight loss.
Right.
Those are a number of the more common side effects. It can change the color of your urine or your stools, and that's really a matter of processing digestive enzymes and whatnot. Generally, those are later symptoms. So there are times when we find these incidentally, or if they're in the right location within the pancreas, because the pancreas is sort of a long, skinny structure, and there's a duct that runs through the entirety of the structure. And if a cancer arises at a certain place, it can actually start causing an obstruction early, leading to early signs before the cancer is actually advanced. Wow. But that's kind of a luck of the draw type thing.
I'm glad you said it that way, because I was thinking, okay, if you had to get this, then that's the way you'd want to. It sounds morbid, almost what I'm talking about.
No, you're right.
But that would be the way you'd want to.
Absolutely. To the ideal way of finding it is incidentally. You're going for an exam for something else, and it just happens to show up, and it's found very early. Those are oftentimes where we get the best results. But second to that, very close second, would be perfect location. Okay.
But there's no markers like it's in simple blood screenings of some sort to show that, or any kind of elevated.
There are some blood tests that can be suggestive, but none of them are diagnostic. In other words, there are certain blood tests you can acquire that may be elevated, but they're not specific for pancreatic cancer per se. You wouldn't say, oh, because of that number, you definitely have pancreatic cancer. It can lead you to a more extensive workup, which may ultimately discover a pancreatic cancer. But the blood tests, where we just go in and they check your cholesterol and they check your electrolytes and all that and your blood levels, that's not useful in this case.
Well, so would that be a situation of there you may have elevated this, low that, what have in the blood, but there's so many things that actually cause that, the pancreatic cancer, maybe the zebra instead of the horse you're looking for? Is that
exactly? That's very well put. Pancreatic cancer, affects about 62,000 people in the United States will be diagnosed this year.
Okay.
So although that's a big number, if you compare it to things like prostate and breast cancer, where you're looking at more of like 250,000 patients.
Right.
It's a less common cancer, and there are many reasons to have elevated liver enzymes or, vague abdominal discomfort. That's low, on the list. It's about 3% of cancer diagnosis is pancreatic cancer.
Right. What have you, since you've been practicing, what have you seen any major changes as far as treatment or changes dealing with pancreatic cancer? I don't want to put you in a box and say treatment or whatever, but
no, pancreatic cancer, because it's not the most common cancer, we don't have a lot of funding for research, and this is one of the downsides of these cancers that are a little less common, is they have less money contributed to their investigation. But there are always ongoing clinical trials for pancreatic cancer. Where we've seen the most improvements is in surgical techniques. It's in actually radiation therapy techniques. We've made some advances there, which have shown improved outcomes. And then, our choice of systemic therapy options. And I use that word specifically to talk about different types of chemotherapy or biological agents or immunotherapy. Those are all a systemic therapy, something that goes through your entire body.
Sure.
And our approach, whether we're offering treatment before surgery or after surgery, that paradigm has shifted some ways. And really, it's a slow process. Pancreatic cancer, we've not seen any huge leaps. Things have gotten better over the last 10 years or so, but it's still a very challenging cancer to treat.
Okay. Well, what else? As far as what can people do? I mean, this is something that again, you say doesn't affect as many people and what have you, so it's not going to make our radar. But to me, it's terrifying, obviously, as any cancer would be. Mm-hmm. Are there certain markers like family history or anything like this that would lead you to? You might want to.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are some genetic predispositions to development of pancreatic cancer. Most commonly, there are these what are called the BRCA genes, BRCA1 and BRCA2. Those are most commonly associated with breast and prostate cancer, but also can increase your risk of developing pancreatic cancer. Right. There are some more rare genetic disorders that most families would be aware of if they were present that can also predispose to pancreatic cancer. Risk factors, smoking, big one. So lifestyle generally has a major impact on most cancers. So healthy lifestyle is much better. You have about a 25% increased risk of developing pancreatic cancer if you're a smoker. That risk actually goes down after you quit, which is pretty amazing. Not all cancers do that.
Tremendous.
And so obesity. Obesity is about 20% increased risk of developing pancreatic cancer as well. So healthy lifestyle, diet, activity, hydration, all of those things are crucial to help patients, reduce their risk. And that's good for your general health as well.
Sure. Well, and I think it's interesting the way you laid it out, because you mentioned smoking. And the second thing you mentioned was obesity. And I do a whole presentation on the live food and talk about the number one killer in the world. And I actually have a podcast called The Number One Killer. And I argue and that the number one killer is not heart disease. And number two right now, number one is heart disease, number two is cancer. And cancer is rapidly approaching. And I said in the introduction, as a matter of fact, that it will probably overtake heart disease. But if you look at it, the number one risk factor for 4 of the top 10 killers is obesity. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's number 2 for cancer. It's number 2 for Alzheimer's. So I think honestly the number one. So I thought it was very interesting the way you laid it out. First smoking, second obesity, and that's exactly how it's written out: smoking and obesity. And you've heard me talk about the MR-FIT study that was conducted in 1970, which is the study that they were looking to try to prove the lipid hypothesis, which of course has never been proven. But in that study, that was the first study where they realized that they found out secondarily that cancer was tied to smoking, and they measured subjects that were smoking and did smoking cessation during the study, and they found out that people with cancer tied to smoking tied to cancer also found out it was tied to heart disease, and they saw that once people stopped smoking, their risk for heart disease went down. And I think that's very interesting. You're saying that their risk for cancer goes down afterwards. I think that's fantastic. I thought I knew that, but now I know it for sure. So,
and what's also true is that patients sometimes will come to me and they'll say, "Oh well, this may be a smoking-related cancer, but I already have it, so I'm going to continue to smoke." And the truth is that patients who continue to smoke during and after treatment have much worse long-term outcomes.
Oh, wow.
Worse survival. They tolerate treatment much worse. So, healthy lifestyle. I talk about it all the time. Nutrition. Whole foods, eating balanced diet, staying active. These will not only portend a longer just general health, a better general health history, but also help you tolerate these treatments and help you recover more quickly.
Right. And and I have to say you live it yourself. So that's fantastic. You're an example of what you preach.
I appreciate that.
As far as when you see a patient that has been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I can only imagine the shock that people go through and what you see and what you deal with. What are some of the first things that you tell them? What are the first things you help them deal with? What are the first things that you experience when you have a patient come in with pancreatic cancer or any cancer for that matter?
Yeah, I think one of the main things I try to stress is that we're all paving our own path here. We hear so much. There's so much that people like to share about either their or a family member's or a friend's journey or what they've read online or read about someone else's experience. But the truth is we all pave our own path.
Right.
we have to, be optimistic and get all the information that we have together and go one step at a time. And sometimes we have to change our direction a little bit based on, how the treatment's going or how they're responding. But we have to just be diligent and, positive thinking is important.
Sure.
But really it's about you as an individual. We are tailoring your therapy based on your needs, based on your cancer, and not on somebody else's experience.
You're hearing an interesting pattern here too, and we'll talk about some of the treatments in a second, but pointing out something that we've talked about in the podcast series, Alive Aging. Told you basically aging and deterioration is based on 4 things, and that is fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, and the one that Dr. Huddleston keeps mentioning, and that is mindset. And how much mindset has to do with this, which I think is amazing, and I think rings true in pretty much everything we do. Mm-hmm. So, as far as the treatment, how do we go about treatment?
In an ideal world, every patient who is diagnosed with pancreatic cancer would be a candidate for surgery, right, and we'd be able to easily remove it. The truth is that's not usually the case, and so it usually requires some combination of therapies, which often include chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and surgery if we can get there. And sometimes that sequencing, it depends on the patient. There are times when the patient may not have a cancer that's easily removable, and so we start with chemotherapy, then we'll add radiation therapy down the line, and in an effort to render someone a surgical candidate so it can be removed, because sure, ideally we get that cancer out. Staging, and that's the medical, the oncologic term for, understanding where the cancer is critical. Sometimes the cancer is just in the pancreas. Sometimes it's in the pancreas and the tissues surrounding the pancreas or in the lymph nodes. Sometimes it's elsewhere. And so understanding, where the cancer is really helps us understand, the best strategy for treatment. And again, some folks respond great and we head down one path, and other folks, will have a problem and we have to change gears.
I got you. And you spoke earlier when we were talking before the podcast about having the right team.
Yes. And, when it comes to all cancers, but pancreatic cancer is a big one, which is, talking about a multidisciplinary team. And so when we talk about treatment at the Mitchell Cancer Institute, we have a dietitian involved. We always have a genetic counselor involved because of the potential risk of genetic mutations being the source of this malignancy. We have radiation oncologists. We have surgical oncologists. In fact, our cancer center director is a nationally renowned pancreas surgeon.
Oh, wow.
He's a gastrointestinal surgeon. He's excellent. And we have, medical oncologists who specifically treat, pancreatic cancer. Right. Everybody getting together, and we have what's called a multidisciplinary tumor board, where we sit down and we discuss each patient's case individually, and we have input from almost all the doctors that may be involved in their care. Right. Again, it helps us. No one has all the answers, sure, and sometimes there's a big benefit to another physician or another team member saying, "Oh, you know what? Did you think about this?" And that can really alter our approach. Right. The more heads, the better. Right. And so understanding, what we're dealing with and getting the perspective of each potential player helps us not only provide individualized care, but also think it helps us tailor the care in a timely way. Sure.
And I've got to put a plug in here, so because I obviously love the team approach, because at Personalized Fitness, that's how we approach our clients. That I've always said that we are have the most qualified staff in the Southeast, but no single trainer is as good as my team. Right. And just like you said a minute ago, that somebody else may come in and look at it a completely different way and mention, well, have you thought of this, and totally change direction. Yep. Same way we approach training. I'm sorry I had to put that plug in, because that's exactly how we go after it ourselves, which I appreciate. So in the cases that you've seen, or the pancreatic cancers that you've treated, I should say in general, what's typically the outcome? I mean, excuse me for saying it, and just looking at numbers and survival rates and what have you.
Right. I mean, raw numbers, it's pretty bad. Unfortunately, it's about 10% long-term survival for all comers. Now, right, again, that's sort of all stages of cancer, including the very earliest to the very latest stages. Right. And this is, again, why finding these cancers earlier is much better, because then their outcome is much better. Patients who can go to surgery earlier tend to have a better outcome. Great. But it is lagging behind a lot of our other cancers, and it will happen. And over the last 10 years, the advances in both systemic therapies and radiation has just gone. It's gone very quickly. Wonderful. And it's just pancreatic cancer, we're still waiting for that thing, whatever it is. We're waiting for that one thing that really helps us tip the scale. We've had that for lung cancer and breast cancer and some other malignancies, but we're waiting for that for pancreatic cancer. And that's why, this awareness is so crucial for this month. It is a fairly rare malignancy, but it requires the appropriate attention paid to it.
Sure. And the reason I knew that question was going to have a real happy ending. So just because of the little bit of research I've done on it. So, but it also speaks to, early detection, having the right team, attacking it early, getting after it as quick as possibly can. And the fact that that's what's going to help get the answers that you need. Right. The more you study it and what have you, and the more support that is brought to it. So out of this, because I'm such a neophyte in this, I'm learning as I'm sitting here asking you questions about it. What have I asked you about? What else would you like people to know as far as pancreatic cancer is concerned, or dealing with cancer in general? Right.
Well, and I think it really goes back to just general health. I mean, take care of yourself. Take care of your body. You can only do so much. We try our best to stay healthy by, through diet, activity, and whatnot. If you walk around on eggshells worried about, developing a cancer, then you spend your life worrying about cancer, not living your life.
Sure.
So modifying your risk factors, understanding your family history, so you can take appropriate steps. If you know someone in your family who has a known genetic, inheritable disease, talk to them, understand that, and then if you have additional questions, then see a genetic counselor, someone that can kind of talk to you, because we can do a lot. We can do a lot more with screening, specialized, specific screening, if we know that there's a higher risk.
Right.
Outside of that known risk, and unfortunately, just the way the healthcare system is designed, our hands are a little tied. We can't just scan everybody and order all these expensive blood tests. And the insurance companies won't pay for it if we don't know that there is a higher risk. So it's about understanding what your risks, modifying those risks if you can yourself, and then understand your family history, and then taking the appropriate actions. Don't be scared of it. Approach it head on. That way it doesn't become a major issue, and don't let it rule your life.
Be proactive about it. So, and of course, like we always talk about all the time, just staying healthy, especially if we can get those obesity numbers down. What would we hopefully we'll put you out of business.
I would love that.
Maybe I can get a job here. We'll find you something to do here. I promise you. Don't worry. Exactly. So, well, it was important for me today to bring awareness to this particular cancer, mainly because it has affected someone in my life. I know it's affected those in yours, and we've actually got a pancreatic cancer survivor who's a client, and I'm hoping to have him on a show and want to have him talk about it. I wanted to kind of coordinate and have all of us here together, but he's actually agreed to do it, so I'm looking forward to speaking to him about it, about his experience. Though, thank you so much for coming on today, and I appreciate you shedding light on this. I want to make sure I covered everything that you wanted to tell everybody.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was great. I think the more awareness we bring to not just pancreatic cancer but other cancers, the better. Knowing that in this region we have this excellent academic center that provides all these services, including a huge amount of research is done there as well. And if there's ever a question, you just need to reach out.
How do they get in touch with you, the Michigan Cancer Center?
So pretty easy. Our website is usamci.com, and our phone number is 251-410-1010.
Fantastic. We're going to have that on social media. We'll have that listed and tagged, so you can just click it. If you're looking at us right now on social media, it's right below. You can click there, and you'll go actually take you to Adam's page and learn a little bit more about him. And if you're interested in some of this, shall I say, pre-screening, or possibly even seeing a genetic specialist like you're talking about, if you have a family history about that, I'm sure that they can make that happen for you. This is I'm going to speak specifically to the Cancer Mitchell Institute. We are blessed in Mobile, Alabama, to have not only the Mitchell family be so supportive of USA and this objective, but having that Cancer Society, Cancer Institute here is amazing. It's an amazing resource that we have here, and we're very thankful for it. So the one thing else I want to finish with and close off on is touch on is that, yes, it's very difficult to diagnose, but approaching it just like you do your fitness, and about longevity, fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, and that most important, that mindset, having that right positive outlook, it makes all the difference in the world. That's what we're all about here at Personal Edge Fitness, and that's what we know will help you lead you to your level of wellness. I want to thank Dr. Huddleston so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to tell you right now in front of everybody, I'd love to have you back sometime.
Absolutely.
So great. And tune in to our next podcast. Thank you so much for listening today.